Okay, so I've gone for the ring light. It might not be the best decision. It's very bright on its own. I've just finished watching the football. Liverpool, they're amazing, aren't they, this year? Liverpool. I struggle to see them getting beaten. They are so full of confidence, and that counts for so much actually in sport. That psychological idea, that idea that you will win, that even if you fall a bit behind, well, it's kind of inevitable, you're going to come back. That kind of confidence is fantastic, I think, and they have that, and that's quite a rare thing. But I had a few comments on a video that I just made on veganism. I normally make about 3 videos a month. This will be my third in one night. That's okay. So I wanted to respond to that, primarily to Jerry Wallington, who'd left a couple of comments and talked about the morality of it and asked me to he said he'd be interested for me to give a few thoughts. I mean, it's a subject that I've thought about a few times, but it's not something that's a primary concern of mine, so I've never really felt like it's something I want to deep dig into making a load of videos on veganism and all the ethics that surround that. But one thing that that I think is true with regard to that is that I tend to feel that a lot of the moral conversations that take place around veganism are kind of like the moral conversations that take place around subjects where religion impinges. And please, do not take from that I'm likening veganism to a religion, because that would be to misinterpret the argument that I'm making. So it doesn't matter which one of these two you want to regard as the religion and the non-religion, as the science and the religion or whatever. It doesn't matter which way around you frame it. The fact is that there are certain subjects which, when religion impinges upon those subjects, that effectively moral discussions take place. And these are things that I've talked about in videos about religion before. And it's impossible to hold those discussions in some ways, because it's like a fake discussion you're having, because underpinning one side, or perhaps both sides, are different moral foundations and a different basis for the moral positions that people are holding. For example, with abortion, if you believe fundamentally that we're ensouled at the moment of creation, okay, doesn't matter whether that's right or wrong, that's what you believe, that we are ensouled at the moment of creation, then that is going to impact upon how you feel about a fetus. Then you have another person who believes that we're not ensouled on the moment at the moment of creation, and that really we only become a human being. We might be human life, obviously, the same as a dismembered, as I said before, a dismembered finger is. We might be human life, human tissue, but we only really become a human being as we become more fleshed out, as our brains and central nervous system starts to develop. And again, it doesn't matter whether that is right or wrong as a perspective. If you hold those two different perspectives, then you can have these discussions about abortion, and it looks like you're batting heads and you're trading arguments, but actually foundationally your positions are so disparate that you're arguing for different things, right? One is arguing for a fetus that is a human being because it is ensouled, and you're arguing for a soul that the other side doesn't even believe in, doesn't even think exists. So you have a very fundamental problem there. And I think that some arguments between vegans and non-vegans fit into the same thing. And so you look at that argument from afar, and it's easy to miss that, right? That you're arguing for different things. You're talking effectively about the moral status of animals and how we feel about animals and how we view animals. And do we give them the same kinds, not necessarily the same moral status as we give humans, but do we afford them some of the moral status that we afford humans, those ones that would preclude us from doing certain things. And if you've got one group that has a group of reasons that say, yes, we do, and this is why, and the other group takes the exact opposite position, then you can have all these arguments that are a tier above that, and it can look like you're having an argument, but fundamentally all those arguments are undermined by these sort of moral foundations which are based on different things. Okay, I need to be careful with moral foundations, because then you're getting into Jonathan Haidt, and when he talks about moral foundations he means a different thing to that. Somebody called Alex in the comments asked me, why might vegans feel compelled to engage in activism? And that's an interesting comment, because in many ways that's sort of fits in with what I've just outlined, and it's a point that I've made before with regard to Christians or theists, which is that why I want to say resolutely pro-abortion, resolutely pro-choice, resolutely pro the ability for women, if they so choose, to have an abortion, at least up until so many weeks. I can understand, and this is something that where I depart from some atheists who take a very hardline view on this, that if you have foundationally a very different view of what a fetus is, that a fetus is ensouled, then absolutely I could understand why a Christian would feel compelled to go beyond the simple principle of, well, I don't believe in abortion, but I'm not going to say anything to you because it's for you to decide for yourself and I'll decide for myself. Because if you genuinely believe that humans have been ensouled by God and this fetus has a human soul, and that you are somehow destroying that human soul by having an abortion, a view that I regard as an absolute load of old bollocks, by the way, but if that is what you genuinely believe, then of course that's going to impact how you view other people having an abortion. And to not look at that and to not appreciate that is the equivalent of saying, well, we should allow child murder, but you only, you don't have to murder your children, Noel, right? But just allow other people to murder their own children. Obviously, that would not be satisfactory to me, because I hold children that have been born in a certain status, or indeed unborn babies above a certain length of time in a certain status. So that would be unsatisfactory to me. So if I believed in a soul, an ensoulment, then I can understand how that could make a difference. And I think that unless you can appreciate that, you're always going to get this sense of friction there. And so, of course, I can understand why, when it comes to vegans likewise could feel compelled. And it might be hard for me to appreciate that, but they are viewing animals, non-human animals, to a different status to the status that I am viewing them. And if I viewed them in the same status that they viewed them, then absolutely I could appreciate it. It would be the same as if I was killing other human beings and eating them, if they're viewing them in the terms that are relevant to have the same status as human beings. And lastly, there was somebody called Joshua Daniel who talked about being a vegan and said, but he was one of the vegans that I kind of talked about, who's just sort of a quiet vegan, doesn't go pushing it on anybody, but wants to eat less meat themselves, would like other people to eat less meat. They're a vegan themselves, would like it if other people ate less meat, and would see that as a way forward. And I absolutely agree with that. For myself, I would like to try and eat less meat. But looking forwards, I don't have, I can understand the benefits to the world if we all ate less meat. And quite honestly, if in 1,000 years' time or 100 years' time or whatever, we'd all stopped eating meat, that's no great loss to me. I'm not going to be like, no, I've got to encourage the next generation to eat lots of meat. Right. I mean, my lad eats meat, and I suppose I've shown him the wonders of bacon and sausages and things like that. But if he decides to eat less meat, then that's great. And it's good for, as far as I'm concerned, it seems to me that it's good for the planet. It's not a bad thing. So I have no problem with that, right? And as a generational thing, that is by far the easiest way to make the shift. It's the same thing as with religion, which is something I talk about again and again and again. Do I not? Which is, it's not disabusing. My anti-theism is not about disabusing people of their religion, but largely the best way that it can happen is for each generation to be less religious and have less God belief than the generation before, because I believe that a society with less religion and less God belief would probably be a better society for a number of reasons which are outside the scope of this video. But it's not about disabusing people of their God belief. And possibly that's the same thing with eating meat, you know. Maybe the best thing for veganism or for vegetarianism first would be to try and capture the next generation. It's not about disabusing people who have grown up, who've spent their lives eating meat and trying to morally bully them out of that, but to invest their energies in trying to capture the next generation and foster an environment where people grow up thinking, actually, yeah, I don't, you know, I'm happy not to eat meat, and I can see the benefits for me or for my environment or for society or for these animals or whatever, for us not to eat meat. Okay, I hope that addresses some of the things. Vegetarianism and veganism is not something that I want to really get into on my main channel and make a lot of song and dance about. So this is kind of a good format to address it. So, okay, thank you.